Hi everyone, it's Plastic EP here from Melbourne, Australia. And you don't get a guitarist bigger than this. Earl Slick coming in from the US. How are you, Earl?
I'm good. Good morning.
You know something, Earl? I've looked over your life. And you know what? The letter B seems to come up through your life. I'll just go through it. You're born in Brooklyn, that's right?
Yeah.
You saw the movie Bela Lugosi Meets the Brooklyn Gorilla.
Yes, I have. I've seen all the Bela Lugosi movies.
That's a great movie. Now, going back to the Bees, right? We got Brooklyn. You're into the blues. Then you got Bowie. Then you've got the Beatles. And of course, then you got Lennon. That's how I work out just roughly how your life is sort of like panned out with these mega artists, including yourself. You're a mega guitarist. How great is that?
I'm going to have to investigate the B thing at another day. Now I'm curious.
No, but are you surprised I brought that up?
What's that?
Are you surprised I brought up the letter B?
I'm nothing surprises me, but it definitely got my attention because I never thought about it before. So
Well, I just did a lot of research, and the letter B's keep coming up because you're talking about the blues, and then you're
Yeah.
talking about the Beatles, and of course the Stones came out like the blues when they started and did their first single, and then John Lennon gave them the song, right? I Want to Be Your Man, and then John came out later and said, well, you didn't think we were going to give them an A side, did you?
yeah. And then there's Buddy Guy. You missed that one.
Yeah, but also, let me say, that's a B-side song, right?
Yeah.
I Want to Be Your Man. It's not an A-side song. So there's another B.
Beat, they're everywhere.
Yeah, I know, but listen, your career must be really good. I saw an interview when you go, like the first time you met Bowie, you saw this skinny guy and you just say it as it is, right?
It was just, yeah.
But you can't get more real than that. Like, you're like the real deal.
I guess so. I never really put a whole lot of thought into it.
Well, let me tell you, it's 2 a.m. here in Melbourne, and I'll get up at 1 a.m. to interview someone like yourself because it's just a buzz talking to you.
Yeah, well, it's 10:14 in the morning in New York.
And as I said, we had a problem getting on the net, but I like it when you sent me an email and you go, if you got a plan B, that's like, to me, just great.
Another B.
Yeah, there you go. Plan B, the B came again. I don't get it. You must have this aura around you, right? I'm being serious, where it's just like things happen. I just got this idea. The things happen to you all the time. You're either in the right place or the right connection. But you know what I mean? It's just like, I've never met someone where I've got this feeling that things just happen. And look back on your life and just think it's right, isn't it?
Well, that's pretty accurate because most anything of note, take the career, has come in out of nowhere. I didn't look for any of the gigs that I've ever gotten. They just fell out of the sky. I don't know how.
But I'm just saying, to audition for Bowie and then you get the call, come in and do it. I mean, between you and me, and we're talking realistically, there's 10 billion guitarists out there. 10 billion guitarists. And he picks you. That's like winning the lotto. I'm putting it in that perspective because he obviously saw great things in you. He obviously liked you as a person. He obviously liked your playing. He obviously liked what you'd done. He obviously liked people talking about you. He obviously liked you doing your own thing. That's what comes across to me.
Well, obviously he liked something or he saw something that I didn't see. So who knows? I don't normally put a whole lot of thought into that stuff. If it happens, I go with it.
Sure, and I can appreciate that too, because you're too busy in the moment. You're not too interested in how it happens. You just do what you need to do.
Yeah. Keeping it simple.
Now, you got to tell me about your fantastic guitar there, if you can tell everyone about that guitar.
This one is my Nash Telecaster. I've got this about 10 years ago from Bill Nash, who owns the company, and I haven't put it down. And I've got another one. It has a sibling, a black sibling. So Yeah, this is my favorite go-to. And it's funny because I've had, I don't know how many guitars over the years, and my first good guitar was a Fender Telecaster. And then about 10 or 12 years ago, I was back on Telecasters again. And I'll probably never put it down.
Can I ask you, you play Green Famous too, don't you?
But yeah, I do. I designed, there's a slick model in Framus, and I still have my Framus guitars, and I still use them. But right now, it's probably going to be the Tele for the duration.
Fantastic. Now listen, I know the story about Bowie recruiting you, but tell me the story about John Lennon recruiting you.
That was another weird one. My manager at the time got a phone call from Jack Douglas, who produced the Double Fantasy and Milk and Honey record, as well as earlier Lennon records and Cheap Trick and Aerosmith. And she got the call from him saying that he wanted me to do a record that he was producing, but he wouldn't tell her who it was. So we were, and they all, because of privacy reasons, right? They didn't want this to leak out. So we didn't know who it was. And I started to think about it, knowing Jack's career, knowing that he had produced Aerosmith, Cheap Trick, all these bands. And I'm thinking, okay, can't be Aerosmith because they're a band. Cheap Trick, that's a band. They don't bring guys in to like session guys or anything. So I did the math and I said, okay, my best bet is Lennon is coming out of hiding. So when my manager spoke to him a second time, I said, when you get him on the phone, just say John Lennon's name and see how he reacts. And that's how we found out it was Lennon. And then I had to shut up because they didn't want it leaking to the press.
So let's get this right. You're recruited. Now, up until this point, you'd never met John Lennon before, yeah?
I actually had met him and worked with him, and I was so, do we have to watch language?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. All right, let's say that my mental state was somewhat compromised at the time when we did Fame on the Bowie Young Americans record, and Across the Universe, a Beatles Lennon song. But I was so out there that I didn't remember that. And that's why he wanted me, because he remembered me from those recordings, which I thought was...
I've got to say, that song, Fame, that's like unbelievable, that song.
It's served us well. Yes, it has.
So I'm just saying, Bowie and John wrote that together. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what was it like being in the studio with the two of them? I can't imagine that.
I don't remember. I remember.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's a blank. Pretty bad, huh?
That's even more amazing.
Yeah, who forgets that one?
Anyway, they brought that back. But listen, working on the comeback John Lennon album, right? Double Fantasy. I mean, how big that must have been, you know? We know about we know what happened to John, as I said, but imagine working on that album, Double Fantasy, and he's ready, and what can I say? He's coming out to the world with this fantastic album. I mean, that must have been amazing in the studio working with him.
It was great. You know, it was, it's not what people would have thought it was, you know? It felt like all the guys too, Hugh McCracken, who was my guitar partner on that, and Tony Levin on bass, and Andy Newmark on drums. These guys were the cream of the crop session guys. And it was great. It was like being in a band that didn't fight, which is unusual for a band that doesn't fight. And we didn't. It was a great, and John treated the recordings and the album as if he was a band member and not like the guy.
Were you amazed with the things that he sort of like pulled out of thin air with his experience, being one of the greatest songwriters of the 20th century, and like from there and beyond? It's like the things he must have done in the studio, you must have not learned a lot. You must have learnt a lot, but you must have observed a lot too from what he was doing.
Yeah, both. I learned a lot. I saw a lot. And Hugh McCracken helped out a lot because I was brought in. The reason John wanted me there is because the rest of the band were really like proficient session guys. They could read music. I couldn't do any of that. I came from blues and rock and roll, which is where John came from. So he wanted one guy in there that was more of a let's say a wild card, which is how they referred to me. But I learned a lot from Hugh McCracken about how to work in a framework with session guys, because it wasn't something that I used to do a lot and still don't.
Yeah, because you know what it is. Let me tell you, you got this natural ability where you just do what you need to do, and they observe what you do, and they go, "This guy got it, and he knows what he's doing." Very hard to find people that know what they're doing, or they find what they need to find to do it. You know, as you said, I've seen some videos now of you on the net where you've got your guitar and you're playing the licks and you're talking about how something came up and you're referring to different things like, well, we've gone in this Bowie song back to the Kinks. So you know your A to Z of the music biz on the guitar, and your head is like a reference, and you can just come out with these things. Like, I just want to say, with the British invasion and the Kinks and the Beatles and the Stones, I mean, there's the biggest influences there. To know them inside and out and what they played. I mean, you must have nurtured all that growing up. At what age did you pick up the guitar and start getting into these songs?
Wow. Let me think about that. I think I think I was 12, 13, maybe. The reason that stuff's embedded in my head is like, if you think about it, when you first started to listen to music, right, those first year or two, that's probably the stuff that you still will refer to. You'll still always go back to that. So as time went on and my guitar playing was developing, changing, and I was working with different people, it always came back to the beginning. That's where where the roots are. So, and the other thing I do, the real secret that I have is I don't overthink things. Somebody
It's simplistic. You simplify everything. That's what Paul McCartney does too. He simplifies, because songs like Yesterday are simple. They're so simple, they're great. And what you do is so simple and it's so great. And also, I've got to tell you something. You know, when you said, I refer to what I do in music, I totally identify with that, because I'll give you an example. In 1964, when the Beatles came to Melbourne, I'm 6 years old. So that wasn't really my introduction to music. But here comes 1967. I'm 8 to 9 years old. The Monkees are the biggest thing in Australia, on TV, records. That's my reference. So even though I started at the Monkees, I'm still going to end up at the Beatles. Because if you talk to my sister, she starts at ABBA and she still ends up at the Beatles. So I understand what you're talking about, your reference point, because that makes total sense.
It absolutely makes sense, because everybody refers back to that, whether you're a musician or you're a listener. The music that got your attention in the first place is the stuff that never goes away. Now, in between that, when new stuff would come out, you hear it, and some of it would sink in and some of it wouldn't sink in, but it always goes back. To me, the Stones, more than the Beatles, introduced me to the blues. The Beatles really didn't. And that's what stuck the whole time. And as I went along, after the first year or two of playing, because of the Stones records, I started referring back. And that's where I learned all the blues stuff, because I did investigate it. I went out and bought old blues records from the 50s, the Robert Johnson stuff, the Fred McDowell stuff, the Lightning Hopkins stuff, which is, I still study those guys. And I have this rule that every day I need to learn one lick, even if it's 2 notes, and I still do it. And it always refers back to the blues.
Unbelievable. And John, I'm just saying, did John ever ask you what you like listening to?
No. Bowie never did, because he knew the blues roots were there, obviously Lennon knew my rock and roll roots and it wasn't something we really discussed,
I know, but just being in the presence of those guys, most musicians, you know, like will either accept it, be relaxed like yourself. You're just a natural, as I said. Doesn't matter who you're playing with. You just do your thing. You're in the groove. That's really what it comes in. They look to you to get your groove, to make their groove, to help their groove to come out with a product. And touring with Bowie, how great is that? You got to tell me about touring with Bowie. That must have been over the top.
You know, over the years it changed, because when the first tour I did was the Diamond Dogs tour in 1974, which was really, we didn't take that out of the States, but that was my first. I've been around because being in New York City, I had done enough work with different people, but not to that level. And so I did what any good-blooded American would do, is I just went into rock and roll insanity, but as time went on, the insane part sort of went a little bit to the background, and then really being able to get into it, the music and the show eventually is what took over. So, that one thing on the Bowie tours, I always looked forward to the next show. If we had a day off, I was thinking about the next show because I just love doing it so much.
Diamond Dogs, I love that song. I just love it.
That's it. It's funny. Here's a little story about that song. Nothing earth-shattering, but there were certain songs that he just didn't like to do. That was one of them. And you'd bring it up and he'd shut it down, right? And so myself and Sterling Campbell, the drummer from like all the 2000s tours, we would play it during sound check, and he'd give us the look of cut it out, but we kept fucking doing it. And one day he just started singing it, and we ended up putting it in the show.
See, that's greatness there, because it's a great song. Yeah.
It's funny because there are certain songs that he really didn't like to do. And then there were certain songs I didn't like to do. We all have songs that we just don't want to play. I mean, if I had to play Rebel Rebel one more time, my head would have exploded. It's a great song, but how many times I played that, it's like, oh my God, but you have to.
Yeah, but Earl, I got to tell you, I love Rebel Rebel too.
Yeah, but if you've played it 20,000 times like I did, you might get sick of it.
Hey, I can appreciate that, right? A lot. But when you look back, let's talk about the album Station to Station. That's one of your favorites, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tell me why it's your favorite and what tracks really stick out for you.
When we went in to make that record, I had no clue of where he was going. Like when we did Young Americans, he made it clear that he wanted to go into the Philadelphia R&B area, right? And we had people like Luther Vandross and Carlos Alomar that came from that world. But on Station, when we went in, he didn't give us like, okay, this is the kind of record we're going to make. We just went in, and he had some songs were complete. Some of them were in bits and pieces. And it wasn't until we were actually finished the basic tracks and we're doing the overdubs that I started to get a clue of what kind of record we were making. And it was, I think the reason it's one of my favorite ones is it was a lot more of an interactive record from my standpoint, just because of the way it was put together and how the guitars were put together and recorded. And then the result speaks for itself. So, I mean, yeah, it was actually, I stretched on that record. I did a bit more experimenting with my playing, because it's not my, there's a little hint of my blues in there, but it's other stuff that I'd not done before.
It's amazing. Now let's move up a bit now to when you played with your own band, right? The Earl Slick Band. How great was that?
That was, that band was put together with guys that I had been playing with from the old neighborhood before I started working with Bowie. So when I had my success with David, and I thought, you know what, maybe I'll put together my own band, and you know, which was what I was doing before he hired me. I never in a million years thought to myself, I think I'm going to be a sideman to so and so. Never thought about that. But when the opportunity came up, I literally did have to make a decision to whether to do it or not, because I thought, if I do this, what happens to what I've been doing? And I thought, well, maybe it'll help. So I did it. So once I started having some success, I got the old band, and I said, look, guys, let's go and pick up where we left off, and that's turned into the Earl Slick Band.
Now, I got to ask you, it's November 2020, and people are going to watch this interview in the future. They will. They will watch this interview as a historical video. Now,
Right.
when they're looking back at this video in the future, what do you want to tell them? What do you want to tell them about the songs you did, about your career? If you had to summarize it in a couple of sentences, what would you say?
God. You know, first thing I would say is that I was in the right place at the right time, and not just to get the gig, because when I started with Bowie in 1974, that was only 20 years after the first like official rock and roll releases happened with Heartbreak Hotel, Rock Around the Clock. That was only about 1954. You look at that now, and now rock and roll is 60 some odd years old. So I was just there at the right time in the history of rock and roll. And as far as how I approached it, I did very little thinking and a lot of playing. I didn't analyze. I didn't construct a plan for my career. If anything, it was the other way around. You know, my career constructed me.
I just want to say, you know why that is? Because you understand that when you block out things that are unimportant, you actually open up your mind to the creative process, and
Yes.
you're focused on that. And that is very hard to do. And see, that's what you do. You actually focus on what you need to do, and all the distractions, they're irrelevant.
Well, you know, that's a good point, but it's also how I'm built and what I can and can't do. And what I can't do is deal with a lot of little details and minutia, because it clogs my brain. And then when that happens, I'm not the most creative person on the planet. So it's my natural ability and disability in that area that worked probably in my favor, because I just don't and cannot deal with small details, which drives some people freaking crazy, but it works for me.
Exactly.
Keep it simple, man.
All I know is this has been a fantastic interview, Earl. If there's anything you want to add for the fans, especially even here in Australia, just add it on now, because they're going to love this interview all over the world, believe me.
Well, number one, congratulations for keeping your goddamn virus numbers at a minimum, you know, and as soon as we open up here again, when we have some grown-ups in the White House, maybe we can start touring again, because, you know, I've been working the last 5 years mostly out of England with Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols. And we had planned on coming to Australia in this year. And obviously we ain't going nowhere. But as soon as we open up, I'd love to get back down there. I haven't been down there since 2011, I think, with the New York Dolls. We did a tour down there. That's the last time I was there.
And what was it like playing with the New York Dolls?
I was there with Bernard Fowler, actually, in 2017. We did the Opera House 2 nights.
You obviously love Australia.
I do. I love it. I mean, to me, the worst part of this whole lockdown thing has been the fact that I can't travel, you know. I mean, I find myself wanting to just go near airports to smell jet fuel.
Unbelievable. I just want to thank you for this great interview, because I tell you what, it's one of the best. That's all I can tell you, Earl.
Well, I love your backdrop that you're out in the space capsule, you know.
Unbelievable. And
All right,
I'm just saying, all that Ziggy Stardust that David Bowie did, it's like so amazing to me, those albums and the band that he had back then. It was just like before its time. You know what I mean?
yeah, I mean, you know, there's two ways of looking at that. You're either barking up the wrong tree or people figure it out somewhere down the line. Like I said, I don't put a whole lot of thought into that stuff.
Exactly. Now, do you have any links or anywhere where they can buy your songs or CDs or whatever,
You know what?
anything that you market?
Right now, there's next year, I'm releasing 2 records. One will be in the spring and another one will be in the fall. One of them is brand new and the other one is a re-release of a record that I did called Zigzag, which was released in Australia, but we're going to release it on another label. I don't have a lot of details yet because we just put this together, but we're looking at the spring for a new release. And there's a book in the works as well.
I was just going to suggest you a book. Now, listen.
It's done.
When the book and the CDs come along, let's do another interview so we can promote it out my way to the world from my
Got
end.
it. Yeah. The book and the CD for Australia will be next fall.
Unbelievable.
We pushed it all back because of the virus, because obviously we can't go out and promote it. So we're just going to hold on to it.
Well, all I want to say is, Earl, you know what? I'll take my hat off to you. You are the real deal. And it's just fantastic how everything is panned out.
It's been a very interesting interview, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you again, Earl. Much appreciated.
Go get some sleep.